Good morning. Please join me in taking refuge and generating bodhicitta and reciting mantras with praise.
Dane chamsu che dage jinsu jibe sunam che drola penchira sanje droba shu sanje che dan su je chonam la chanju pardo dane chamsu che dage jinsu jibe sunam che Rola penchira sanje droba shu sanje chodan soje chonayam la chanchu pardo dane chamsu che dage jinsu jibe sunam che Rola penchira sanje droba shu Semche tamche dewa tan dewe jodan dembar churchi dungar tan dungar che jodan chawar churchi dungar mebe dewa tamba tam indrawar churchi Nyeren chadan tan charve tan yom chenpo la nebar churche semche tamche dewa tan deve jodan dembar churche dungara tan dungara che jodan chawar churche dungara mebe dewa tamba tan mindra war churche Nyeren chadan tan charve tan yom chenpo la nebar churche semche tamche dewa tan deve jodan dembar churche dungara tan dungara che jodan chawar churche dungara mebe dewa tamba tan mindra war churche Nyeren chadan tan charve tan yom chenpo la nebar churche Chomden de jambe yang la chan tsara lo Kange lo dren dren nye dren dren nye dra nam da rab sara ve chi nye tun kun chi shen si chi ni che to kara le bam tse Kanda si be tsun ra ma ri mun tu mo dung ra che sara ve ro tso kun la pur che tar se yan la chu chu yang den Rudara che ro nyomo nye long le che cha ro ro tse che ma re musra dung ra nyuku chi nye chun tse ra che na. Dune ta chen sa chu tar sun yun tena lu zo jar se tu yu ko chu ra chu dan chu nye jen da lu musra njambe yang la du. Zeden chu je chen rab sir she demo mba rab saran kadan ten chu shun lo to bai lo zhe bo be nang wa tsar do so
Good morning, everybody. So, we studied the first part of the text of the Bhadrachari, the Zampoche Malam, aspirations to universally good conduct. So this text, the title of the text is most often translated as the King of Aspiration Prayers. So according to the commentaries, there are 4 parts. The first part is about the purification of our negative actions together with the development of all the necessary merits to enter, required to enter the bodhisattva's way. The second part is about aspirations mostly. There are 16 subparts: aspiration to pure attitude, to pure conduct, to never forget bodhicitta, aspiration to be free from all stains, aspiration to bring beings to happiness, aspiration to wear the armor of dedication, of accomplishing bodhisattva's activity, to help masters, to help for Dhamma's prosperity, aspiration to obtain an inexhaustible treasure, aspiration to enter into beneficial activity, where one part is about seeing the Buddha in the Pure Land, listening to Buddha's speech, entering hearing the turning of the wheel, seeing all the Buddhas in one instant, entering in the Buddha's sphere of activity, accomplishing the Pure Land, entering in Buddha's presence. Then we go to the next aspiration, aspiring to enlightenment through powers, the one that clears away obscuration, the enlightened activity, and then lastly we have aspiration to pure conduct, imitating Buddhas, bodhisattvas, manjushri, and then the conclusion of the aspiration, which is the second part. Then we have the third part, the extent of the aspiration, and then the last part, the benefits of the aspiration in general first, the 13 benefits in details, and then it is concluded with dedication of the merit of those virtuous aspirations, following the Bodhisattva's example, then dedication following Buddha's example, dedication to actualize the fruit, dedication to receive Buddha's prophecy, dedication to help others, and then the conclusion stanzas. So here, in brief, so those are the great lines, the different parts of the text, the main subject. So today we are approaching the end of our course, and I would like to keep the main part for the next course that will also be about this subject. So we'll be able to study all the wishes together that come in that part. And so this morning I thought we could come back on a few points concerning the Bodhisattva's practice. Why? Because those stanzas can't be considered independently from Bodhisattva's way, especially generating bodhicitta and Bodhisattva's practices. So in order to give you, let's say, a few affirmations that can be useful in your practice, and also I want to give you more time to answer your questions. So Concerning the practices themselves, as we saw, the Bodhisattva's way, the so-called Bodhisattva way, mostly relies on generating bodhicitta. We can follow the very famous stanza spoken by Nagarjuna that we all first recite, the following one. May the enlightened mind, rare and sublime, be born where it was not born yet, and where it is already born. Or rather, may the thought of enlightenment where it is not born yet, which is rare and sublime, be born where it is not born yet, and where it is already born, may it always develop more. So it is that stanza that we recite, right? So here we can see in that aspiration so that the first point is about generating the thought of enlightenment, meaning bodhicitta. If we haven't generated bodhicitta yet, entering the great vehicle, the vehicle of bodhisattva, actually we have to know it actually starts with generating bodhicitta. Without bodhicitta, there is no great vehicle. We can't pretend or think we are entering the great vehicle without bodhicitta. As we saw before, when we studied the teaching on the 4 points, the 4 detachment to this life, detachment from this life, from samsara, from personal interest. When we've seen those points, we can't actually consider the Bodhisattva's way from an egoist perspective. It is a way, a path that really relies on altruism, an altruistic attitude completely free of any personal interest. And also, but however, it's not a sacrificing path. The salvation of others is our own salvation. Benefit of others is our own benefit. So it is moved by the love and the compassion that we develop to enter that vehicle. So the root or the foundation of the path is bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is inseparable from compassion's expression. It's totally inspired by universal compassion. So sometimes some people do the mistake to think that in Buddhism it's only in the great vehicle that we talk about loving kindness and compassion towards all sentient beings without any exception, and it would be their particular feature of the great vehicle, and that wouldn't exist in other vehicles. But here it's a wrong understanding. In the common vehicle, in the Shravaka vehicle, in the Pratika Buddha vehicle, all the practitioners, all of them train in developing loving kindness and compassion, as we can find in their scriptures. For example, in the practice of the 4 Brahmavihara, the 4 sublime places, meaning cultivating loving kindness, maitri, compassion, karuna in Sanskrit, joy, metta, and equanimity, peksha, cultivating those towards all sentient beings without any exception. And then, therefore, we can wonder, what does make the Bodhisattva approach special? What is special in Bodhisattva's approach? it's not only a question of loving kindness. What makes it special is the courage aspect. I mean here, the bodhisattva has accepts and also chooses with enthusiasm, joyfully, all the difficulties. He chooses to face all the difficulties that one can face when we do all sentient beings benefit. There is an illustration given by the Buddha to underline this very point. Imagine a child, and that child falls because of lack of attention. He falls in a well or in a hole full of dirty stuff. So he yells and calls his parents. His parents will come to help him, but it is possible that one of the two parents will have more courage to jump in the dirty hole, and maybe the other one won't have the courage. So at that moment, can we say that the parent who doesn't dare to jump in the dirty hole, that he likes his child less? No, it's not a difference of love, it's a difference of courage. This is what distinguishes the great vehicles approach. So here, the fact of cultivating love and compassion towards all sentient beings is a fundamental approach that is common in all Buddhist vehicles. Even if the Shravaka mostly applies himself to liberate himself from samsara, but he doesn't do it without disregarding love or compassion to sentient beings. And also we shouldn't think that they have no activity and that they don't do others benefit. There are many practitioners from the Shravaka vehicle that actually showed great compassion and a great altruistic practice and actions. There are some Shravakas, some Arhats, that made a wish to not enter nirvana until they had helped a lot of sentient beings to reach it themselves. There we have the story of an Arhat that next to the cave where he was staying, there was a huge well. Each time someone was getting closer to nirvana, was reaching nirvana, he was throwing a grain of sand inside the well. And so he made the wish that as long as the well was not full of sand, he wouldn't enter into nirvana himself. So they actually have a very big activity, but that activity is limited. Even if it seems inconceivable for us, filling a huge well with sand, of course, is a great, an extraordinary contribution. But as we can see here, as we saw, for bodhisattvas, and the corresponding part in Kantavya Sutra, the extent or the duration of the activity in which bodhisattvas engage to is infinite, is perpetual. So for that one needs courage, one needs perseverance, unequal perseverance. And it is that courage that allows the bodhisattva not only to liberate from conditioned existence, existence, but also to truly develop a beneficial activity for sentient beings and accomplishing full and complete enlightenment that is endowed with that activity for all sentient beings in all times, perpetually. So the first point here is about really understanding what bodhicitta is. And also maybe when we hear about that wish of all sentient beings, happiness, ending sentient beings, suffering, it may be something we are attracted to, we are inclined to. And here, the fact that our merit came to maturity and expresses in our mind stream within ourselves, this kind of inclination to cultivate bodhicitta also relies on faith. As we defined it before, depa prasha, meaning understanding what the teaching is about and trusting, having faith in it. Why? Because we have understood its truth. We have understood how much what the Buddha says is true. So this faith relies on clarity, understanding, clarity of mind concerning reality. And that clarity and that trust comes from understanding the Buddha's teaching, and especially the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, the truth of origin of suffering, the truth of the path, and the truth of beyond suffering, cessation. When we understand that, when we see it really, then trust comes in. It is what brings us to engage, to enter the path, and it really gives us the trust and the faith to aspire to enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And we don't see the enlightenment possibility. Most often we haven't even wished enlightenment for ourselves, and so we can't even wish it for other sentient beings. So we, through loving kindness, we wish it for everyone, not only for ourselves. And here is the initial expression that brings us to develop bodhicitta. And we can see that bodhicitta can increase even more. First of all, it's just an intention, and that intention can come together with a real engagement, a real application to really realize this wish that applies to practice, and so once eliminates ignorance. If we don't do so, how can we even think about helping other sentient beings? We don't even have the means. So here, to come back on Nagarjuna's stanza, first of all, we have to generate bodhicitta properly. And so the fact of generating bodhicitta properly implies those different points, meaning trust or faith, that itself relies on understanding Dharma, the right understanding of Dharma. And this trust will express itself through the seven branch practice that we just studied. The seven branch practice, or the practice in 7 parts. Admiration, devotion, trust, faith, bring to respect, reverence, that aren't a kind of obligation or a kind of tax we'd have to pay, which are it is real. It comes from appreciation, appreciating the truth of the teaching, appreciating its benefits. So that trust expresses through the practice of paying homage to Buddhas and Bodhisattva, and to truly engage ourselves into offerings, and then really understanding the teaching, the withdrawing of affliction, to really turn away to anything that's hindering the path, to rejoice in what brings us to enlightenment, and then to turn ourselves towards the source of enlightenment, towards teaching, being in the presence of enlightened beings, giving away attachment towards oneself, towards activity, towards others, through understanding reality, the reality of absence of a subject, action, object, and doing so accomplishing dedication, meaning dedicating one's practice to the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Those practices are somehow preliminaries, preparatory, and then they accompany the generation of bodhicitta. So how should we do when we haven't generated bodhicitta yet? We must apply oneself to the causes that allows oneself to develop bodhicitta genuinely. So on one hand, in deepening one's understanding of Dharma, it may be that we have enough merit so that spontaneously we are inclined into cultivating such a conduct, and we feel able to always act for sentient beings' benefit. And in that case, it may be that bodhicitta is nothing new. You may have already familiarized yourself in that in past lives, and then it comes naturally in this existence. This is what we call sometimes Jigsepa, meaning the awaken of bodhisattva's potential. Jigsepa, the bodhisattva's potential awakens in our mind stream, and the thoughts of enlightenment manifest. So it is important here to try to understand the real causes. If we don't have them, trying to cultivate them. So the best way here, of course, is through deepening one's understanding of Dharma, through listening, reflection, contemplation, and also through the development of merit, meaning gathering all inner conditions that brings one to generating bodhicitta. So it is summed up here. It's all contained in the 7 brush practice that we find here. Of course, there are other points that we saw, but like, for example, when we are brought to taking bodhisattva's vow, we mostly accomplish that as a preliminary before promising, before engaging into bodhisattva's practice. We recite and we cultivate the 7 branch practice, and also we cultivate refining one's way of seeing, one's thought, meaning going beyond our usual way of relying always on the self. Our way of doing that is always dictated by the self, and seeing how all beings are undifferent from ourselves, how important they are to us, and understanding how precious beings are. applying oneself for others, consecrating ourselves for others, we can see how beneficial it is for oneself. And really wishing, thinking from the depth of our heart the liberation of suffering for all sentient beings. That kind of thought, that kind of analysis or reflection is lojong, the so-called lojong, refining the mind, training the mind. Meaning here to familiarize oneself with the thought of kindness towards all sentient beings, and training in that conduct within ourselves. For example, we saw the practice in seven part, recognizing that all beings have been our mother, father, feeling, seeing their kindness, feeling gratitude on the basis of which we want happiness for them, and wanting that then all beings that don't feel, that don't have happiness, get happiness, then developing compassion, wishing that all beings that don't know happiness here are free from suffering. And so wanted to bring them liberation from suffering, whatever it costs us, without being attached to oneself, to our possession. This is the so-called superior thought, the thought that has no interest for oneself, on the basis of which we formulate the wish to attain enlightenment for all sentient beings, which is aspiration, bodhicitta, where we engage to follow bodhisattva's conduct. So here it is the first point. Then we have the thought that where enlightenment was not generated, it be generated. So we really generate within ourselves bodhicitta. Nowadays we use the image. It's like if we have a fabric that we want to color, there may be stains on the fabric, and if we don't clean up those stains before applying the color won't stay properly. So in order to do well, first we must clean the fabric very well. So the practice is about purifying all the stains that are obscurations, veils that hinder the generation of bodhicitta. And this is why we practice the confession or shakpa in Tibetan, unveiling the faults, if we translate it literally. And so then, for example, if you want to invite a high person in your place, prestigious high person in your place, you must clean up your house very well first. If you didn't clean up well, the King of England won't ever come in your place. The King or the Queen of Ireland won't ever come to your place if it's not prepared properly. In the same way, if you don't prepare your stream of mind properly, you just say, oh, I want to accomplish enlightenment, but you didn't prepare well, it will not happen. So in the same way, we engage into reverence, into prostration, contemplating qualities, praising the qualities. Those practices really allow one to prepare one's mind in order to prepare oneself to what was the source, the Buddha's source, meaning generating bodhicitta. Here it's about developing in oneself the conditions that allowed Buddhahood to take place. So rejoicing in virtues, asking Buddhas to teach, requesting them to remain for a long time, making offerings and so on. All those practices are about preparing one's mind to develop bodhicitta's enlightened mind. Once bodhicitta has been generated, then it is important to make sure that bodhicitta doesn't deteriorate. In fact, it is a little bit like in the middle of all agitation. It's a little bit like trying to establish something stable, or maybe the example we can use is like trying to light up a candle in the wind. It can be shut down at any moment, meaning that our stream of mind right now is not free from ignorance. It's not yet free from self-grasping. We are not much familiarized with the absence of self, of phenomena, of ourself. And because of that, there is a strong grasping to self, to I, to mine, a strong discrimination towards things. And so a lot of hatred, a lot of aversion to what we think is harmful, a lot of desire to what we think is beneficial. And so our mind constantly keep on desire, aversion, and is agitated by those. And we can maintain that kind of attitude that is free of interest, of hopes. We can't keep love and compassion to sentient beings. We may think about others, but still I have first to liberate myself. There is me first. And in that way, first turning towards Shravaka's vehicle is a kind of deterioration because it lacks courage, it lacks universal compassion. So thinking about it, we think, sometimes it's easy to say love one another. It's easy to say, but concretely, we need to be there for others. And being there for others is really hard, actually. And here, self-grasping always finds a way to manifest. And we often lie to ourselves. We often lie to ourselves through ego's grasping. So once we've generated bodhicitta in a genuine way, it's important to keep bodhicitta. It's a bit like military strategies. It's important to conquer a land, and once the land is obtained, it's important to take care that we don't lose the territory. So once we have generated bodhicitta, it's important to make sure that we don't lose bodhicitta. And what allows it is, it's first of all the first 3 practices of the 6 paramitas. So we can see that all the bodhisattvas practice are summed up or are included in the 6 paramitas. And so the practice of paramita is especially important on the path, and in particular ethical discipline and patience, together with generosity. Those 3 are allowing oneself to not lose bodhicitta. It is the way of keeping the obtained land, the conquered land. The conquered land, sorry. So here, ethical discipline is about escape through keeping Trengpa session, vigilance and lucidity. So Trengpa is keeping in mind to never forget ethical conduct, the bodhisattva vows, the promise we took. So to never forget at any time in the day, in the morning, in the evening, to always remember that promise, that goal. I'm often asked, which practice should I do in the morning, in the evening? Should I recite the Heart Sutra? All those practices, you can do them as much as you can, but mostly you shouldn't forget the essence of all those practices, that is bodhicitta. If you do those meditation without bodhicitta, then you're getting more far. You're getting far from the way. If you never forget bodhicitta, then you maintain yourself on the way. So what is important is that at any moment, whether it is in the morning, in the evening, before sleeping, whatever you do, whatever you engage in, whatever you decide, whatever you engage in your life, it has to be moved by bodhicitta, moved by loving kindness and compassion towards sentient beings. Only this makes sense, truly. All other things you can follow are a lack of time. Anything you can acquire, as we saw before, concerning the 8 worldly dharmas, are temporarily. We have to leave them one day. So being attached to that doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is following enlightenment, and not as a bodhisattva, a personal enlightenment, but every sentient being's enlightenment, and to always keep that intention to develop. Of course, it's possible temporarily to develop lots of pride or attachment to that thought, because we have that habit to identify oneself. And here, of course, as a bodhisattva, we're going to try to go beyond pride, but temporarily we can be attached to that thought. It's okay. We are aspiring to the bodhisattva's path. And when we take bodhisattva's vow, we actually obtain a name. Why? Because it's in order to not forget. When we receive bodhisattva's vow, we really change our orientation, our goal. So we're going to try to keep in higher esteem Buddha's teachings, bodhisattva's practice with the greatest humility. We will try to constantly put it into practice, starting in first to never forget in any circumstance one's engagement towards all sentient beings. It's a promise, very important, solemn promise that we take in front of all the Buddhas. As you can see in Samantabhadra's text, on each atom there are as many Buddhas, as they are in the universe and in front of all of them, I'm taking that engagement. So it's a very solemn promise. And it's also a promise that we do, considering all sentient beings. Having taken the bodhisattvas for, I cannot ever consider or think that I can neglect any sentient beings, whether it's just the smaller insect, the being that tortures me, or the one that is good to me. To all those sentient beings, I promised enlightenment, and I temporarily promised not only to not harm them, but also to accomplish their good. So it is cultivating that intention, that attitude in one's life. This is extremely important. And it is something that we shouldn't take as a burden. It is really important. Don't take it as a burden or as an obligation. This attitude itself is salvation. For example, if you consider the 4 immeasurable teaching, we talk about loving kindness, and most often we mistake loving kindness with desire attachment. We talk about compassion, which we sometimes mistake with pity. Or the fact of being so shocked with suffering that it makes us inactive, as it was asked to me in a question before. We feel completely distressed with worn out with others sentient beings suffering, by other sentient beings suffering. So this is when we don't have enough compassion, etc. So without falling on the wrong side of those 4 immeasurable, understanding their real qualities, loving kindness is actually wanting to bring happiness to those who don't have it. Compassion is wanting to free beings from suffering, and wanting all beings to be happy is joy, satisfaction, and wanting all beings to be free from affliction and establishing oneself in that state is the so-called equanimity. So keeping in mind those qualities, seeing those benefits, the one that is established in equanimity is totally free from afflictions. So it is on that basis that we will engage in loving compassion and cultivate joy, and so the other 3 qualities. And we'll see that those qualities themselves are the real protection, they are the real benefit. There is no bigger protection for oneself than loving kindness, because it's source of serenity, well-being. It's the best way to relate to the world and to others. The world is transformed into a friend. Beings help us, even if we don't especially wish so. And also the state, the mind that has love, compassion is deeply beneficial, and so we cultivate it for those qualities without any hope or expectation, without any desire for any retribution. Oh, we still have some time because it's not 11 yet. Rinpoche thought he had to stop at 10:30, but no, it's 11. It's fine. There are a few minutes left. So, to tell you here, the second point I wanted to say, once we have generated bodhicitta, the important is to know how to preserve it. How to preserve it. So, we need to feel respect, cherishing bodhicitta. We need to cherish bodhicitta, and we need to remember what is opposite to bodhisattva's conduct, what is extraordinary in bodhisattva's ethics and conduct, and in the contrary to Shravaka's ethics. It's not about following verbal speech rules. It's really about mind's ethics or mind's rule. And in that way, it's much harder. It's much easier to think, oh, I won't lie, I won't kill, but I can still hate and feel desire and attachment. It's easier. In that way, thinking so it's an easier discipline. And here the bodhisattva's ethic goes much further. It encompasses all ethics because it includes mind ethic, meaning here that at no moment, at no time we abandon any sentient being. At no time we abandon loving kindness to any sentient being. So here, if you want, in essence, it is the essence of bodhisattva's conduct, to never abandon sentient beings. Of course, sometimes we do mistakes. There are lists that we can find, the 4 black dharmas, the 18 downfalls. According to Nagarjuna's lineage, there are other lists according to Asanga's lineage. It's important to study them, but in essence, ethical discipline is about not harming any sentient beings, and in that sense to never abandon any sentient beings, and doing the contrary, trying to accomplish sentient beings' good welfare, developing one's own qualities. So what is the problem we can sometimes meet here, encounter here, that is the main obstacle? It is when we have to face violence, aggressivity, hatred. Hatred can rise, and this is when we have to cultivate patience. What can also be an obstacle is our attachment to our own welfare. So usually we present in order generosity, ethical discipline, and patience. And those 3 qualities allows one to go beyond self-attachment, being always in generous, kind attitude, not abandoning sentient beings, meaning that generosity state of mind is where we don't harm any sentient beings. It's not generosity that harms others, it only makes the benefits. If that generosity creates hatred or that kind of emotion, then it can't create any loving kindness. It is that whatever happens, we are never tired of doing sentient beings' welfare. So those 3 qualities are really important in order to maintain bodhicitta. Once bodhicitta has been protected and kept, then we have the 3rd point, to develop bodhicitta. once we have conquered a land, once we have secured a land, we need to make the land grow, develop infrastructures, develop economy on the land. And make it prosperous. We need to develop the idea we had at first. So here it's the same with bodhicitta. Once that we have developed bodhicitta, and through discipline we maintain bodhicitta, and then it is important to perfect it so that bodhicitta becomes enlightenment. So what allows us to perfect bodhicitta? It is wisdom, and wisdom can be fully developed with a mind that is all the time disturbed. So mind has to be its own master, to not fall in constant agitation. So here we need to develop the stability of meditative concentration. So those points are the main part of the path. So this is the main practice. And the other parts are just auxiliaries. It's samadhi and prajna. They are the essential. And the essential of essential is prajna, wisdom. And the common strength to any progress is enthusiasm. The joy is to practice, which is the fourth among the 6 paramitas. So enthusiasm allows one to find, of course, joy in patience, in ethics, etc. And it helps one to develop wisdom. So to present your paramitas in another way, with love and compassion towards all sentient beings, generosity will naturally express itself, and that generosity cannot lack, of course, of discipline, of ethics. It is non-harming for oneself and others. Establishing oneself in what doesn't harm oneself or others implies here that will make so that no adversity can turn us away from that goal. Whatever adversity will meet, it won't give rise to any rising of hatred and all, and so we won't lose bodhicitta. If bodhicitta is here, nothing makes us weary or tired. Joy, enthusiasm are here. What makes us lazy is that we find what we are doing hard, tiring. This is the lack of patience. If there is patience, nothing is hard. Insults, pains, difficulties are a source of joy, because I know I'm actually helping sentient beings. Like a doctor who heals a patient, even if it's hard for him, he's completely taken by the joys of healing the patient, and so he can accept any difficulty implied in his beneficial action. So here, in the same way, the bodhisattva is untired, is never tired, is tireless, and so In this way, the stability of mind is acquired. Mind doesn't turn away from bodhicitta. It is constantly applying to bodhicitta. And so when mind is stable in this way, its capacity to understand, to observe reality is developed. And so we observe the ultimate reality of phenomena. And this is the way that each paramita brings to the next one. Each next one implies the preceding one, and so paramitas complete each other. So here we have these were the 3 points I wanted to talk about. That it is really important to keep bodhicitta and how. So first generating bodhicitta, preserving it, protecting it, and then perfecting it. In the next session, we'll look more in detail so that you can really understand the 6 paramitas. I propose that we go deeper in those 6. If you have a few questions, we will see it in the next session. We're gonna have a short break right now. It's 11:02. I don't want to take
By Cyber, Show. On se retrouve à 30, 11h30. Har dan dong har je jo dan ram har chur je dewa tam ba da har chur je nye je dan zhe ve dan nyom chen bo la ne ba chur je chom den de jam be yang lai chan sai lo Kange lo dre dim nye zhendar nye dara nam da rab sarve chi nye tun gun chi chi si chi ni chi tu kara lek bam se kanda si be tsun ra ma ri mun tu mu dung ra chi sarve dro tsu kyun la pu chi tar se yen la chu chu yang den song Zhu dar che zho nyu mo ni long le che cha zho zho se che ma ri mun se dong ra nyu gu chi nye chun ze ra zhe nam ne da jian sa ju tar sun yin den le zo gyar se tu yu gu chi ra ju dang ju ni jian zhe da lu mun se jian be yang la du zhe den ju ji chen ra wu se che da lu de mo mun ba rab sa ne ga dan den ju xiong lu do wa ye bo bian hang wa car do ser
So before giving time for questions and answers, I propose that we go a bit more in details, even though briefly in details, the 6 parameters. So I propose that we look at the different aspects of the 6 parameters. So first of all, we have generosity, called dana in Sanskrit and jinpa in Tibetan. Then we have ethical discipline, called shila or tsuchim. And then we have patience, shanti or sepa in Tibetan. Then we have diligence or enthusiasm, virya, tsundru. Then we have dhyana, meditation. And then we have prajna, the superior knowledge or wisdom, sharap in Tibetan. So for the first one, dana, generosity, it means to eliminate misery. Da means misery in Sanskrit, and na is the negation. So here it means what eliminates poverty or misery is generosity. There are 3 kinds of generosities: material generosity, protection generosity, and dharma generosity. So material generosity means the goods, the physical things that we can give. The so-called protection generosity is to protect beings against danger, against thieves, bandits, natural dangers, and dangers created by other kind of sentient beings, like disasters or different calamities we can imagine a variety of calamities that beings can be protected from. And then thirdly, we have the generosity of Dharma, which is sharing one's knowledge that is beneficial for beings. And among all the knowledges, the most beneficial one is the knowledge of Dharma. We can also differentiate different kind of inappropriate way of giving with a bad for example, with a bad intention, or giving something that is harmful, or inappropriate. The person to whom we give it is inappropriate. So those are they can also be a kind of generosity that is harmful to others or to someone else. So those are wrong, of course. Or to pretend we are practicing generosities to take advantage from the person. All those are with negative intention. Is also included here the selfish giving. For example, giving because we want something in return. We give. It's giving in order to get a better body in the next rebirth, a God body or something like that. So the point is to do an appropriate donation. We do our generosity. We do the thing not because we are hoping for future result, and not because of attachment to I. Inappropriate objects, giving inappropriate objects means giving things that can harm oneself, or giving things that shouldn't be given, such as one's parents. The improper recipient is someone who asks something that he or she doesn't really need. For example, if someone asks our life, the bodhisattva doesn't have to give it because it's harming for him. And also, the person may have requested that just to challenge the bodhisattva, and it's not really really useful for him. And then, what is requested by those who are mad? So, in that case, donating won't help them and would harm us. And then the wrong attitude, the wrong conduct is giving because on the basis of hostility, or on the basis of contempt, or giving to powerful people in order to obtain something in return, or giving with laughter to others, like making fun of the other one. So those are inappropriate manners of giving. Those are inappropriate generosity. So appropriate giving is made out of an altruistic motivation. Giving what is beneficial, giving to appropriate objects, the three jewels, the master, the beings that have been very beneficial to us, our parents, our teachers, our masters. So the fields of qualities, and also the fields of the miserable fields, meaning people who are sick, people who are suffering. Then we have the field of enemies, meaning those who've harmed us. It's also about having loving kindness towards them, giving to them as well, and having a compassionate and loving conduct towards them, having respect when we practice generosity towards them, and giving what is appropriate. For example, it is inappropriate to give to someone who has already eaten too much, even more food. We have to give what is appropriate, what is proper. And then concerning ethical discipline, we also have 3 aspects. If we look in details, there are 3 kinds of ethical discipline. The first is avoiding what is negative. So to avoid engaging in any conduct that harms oneself or others, which is the opposite of discipline. For example, we mentioned the 10 negative actions, especially the 3 actions of body and the 4 of speech, so we can avoid those negative actions. And then the second aspect is to accomplish those qualities, to develop those qualities. For example, the qualities of the 6 paramitas, qualities that we don't have trying to acquire them, those that we have to maintain them and to perfect them. So 3 aspects: acquiring qualities, maintaining qualities, perfecting qualities. Those 3 aspects. And then the third aspect of ethical discipline is to accomplish the benefit of sentient beings for their now, for their present life, and for their future life, so that they get to enlightenment. Then we have the next paramita, patience. Patience towards those who harm us. Patience regarding pain, towards pain, and patience regarding dharma. So the first kind of patience is when other people deliberately harm us, and so at that time to not be agitated, meaning to not feel despise, hostility, anger, and being able to stay calm in front of all the harm others can do us, in front of bad words, etc. Then there is patience concerning or towards suffering or pain. Means there is the suffering that comes because of sickness. It was not created done by someone else. It's something that comes by itself, so it can be physical suffering or mental suffering. And here to not feel unsatisfied with that situation. It's about to not feel dissatisfied and see it as a small thing, to not attach oneself to that difficulty, which actually makes it get bigger and harder. So if we are able to accept the situation, the pain reduces. Then there is patience towards dharma. Dharma is deep, deep in a way that it's very subtle. It's hard to really understand. For example, the teaching on emptiness, on the codependent arising, Dharma is very vast. So that we are, in order to engage, when we engage in Dharma, we may feel that something is difficult or inaccessible, and here it's about remaining, staying patient towards that, in a way that we observe, in a way that we understand that subtle things are extremely vast, so we don't get discouraged, agitated by the subtlety and the vastness of the teaching. So that was the third of the 6 paramitas. So these paramitas, as we saw, are extremely important to keep and maintain bodhicitta. Then, concerning the 4th paramita, virya, or tsundru in Tibetan, diligence, enthusiasm. So here, when we look in detail, we can distinguish 3 kinds. The first one is the armor-like diligence. And the second is the diligence of application. And the third one is the diligence of never giving up. So the first one is choice concerning practice, and it's like an armor because it understands difficulties, but joy is so strong that whatever practice difficulty arise in the practice, one engages in that without any worry, because there is an acceptation of difficulty, tolerance of difficulty, because Joyce understands the ultimate and true benefits of practice, and so the superficial difficulties can be accepted by Joyce. They are accepted even before even encountering them. So we can imagine here the practice of compassion. We are facing others' suffering, and we may face many difficulties. We give time to others. We give our possessions to others. We may be taken by greediness, weariness, tiredness. So here we also have to look at the opposite of the 6 paramitas. The opposite of generosity is greediness. Oh, sorry, Maji says we'll look at the opposites later. because we understand the benefit and the quality of practice. As soon as we engage into that, it's like we have an armor. It's like the fighter trusts so much his armor that he doesn't hesitate to jump into the fighting field. Because we understand the benefits of the practice, we are able to engage in practice, whatever it is, whether it is ethical discipline, Dharma studies, meditation, practice. There is a kind of trust that what we are doing is extremely beneficial. And so we are able to really engage oneself in the practice. The second aspect is the aspect of continuity, meaning that we don't strive for enlightenment uncontinuously with breaks. We actually apply continuously. There is no interruption. And then the next point is that whatever happens to us in our life, nothing turns us away from enlightenment. Whatever circumstance we may encounter, we are never discouraged. We can imagine a very difficult situation, such as sickness, a loss, very adverse outside circumstances, unbearables, our family, everything is in danger. And at that time we may choose to follow hatred. But the bodhisattva here, even if his family is killed, even if his hands are cut, he never loses courage. There is a story about that in the Jataka tale. In his past life, the Buddha had taken rebirth as the son of a king, and he was jealous. The king was jealous of the son of the queen, and in order to punish him, he ordered to cut the son's hand. And so the Buddha was that son, and the Buddha kept smiling even his first hand got cut. So the king asked for the second hand to be cut, and he was still smiling. And then they cut all the members, even his head. And here the Bodhisattva never felt any hatred, never any aversion. And he even wished that when I will be a Buddha, may I be able to cut all your afflictions one by one in your mind. So whatever circumstances are met, there is such a trust, such an enthusiasm that practice is unmovable, unmoving, and one never gets away from bodhicitta. Then we have dhyana, samten in Tibetan, which refers to meditation. That can be translated as contemplation. So it is a state of mind free from any distraction. In Tibetan, this is what it means, samten, the mind stability. It actually points to the fruit of meditation practice. The bhavana term, often translated in Tibetan as gom, which means to exert oneself, to train in cultivating loving kindness. So here, regarding dhyana, it's the cultivation of shamatha, of mental calmness, and when one a certain state of contemplation is attained, it's called dhyana. It's different states. So we have like the 4 different dhyanas, the 4 different levels, characterized by a level of stability of the mind. So bhavana, gam, is most often translated by meditation, and in reality it is the fact of cultivating, exerting a quality, and here it's shamatha that brings to dhyanas, those different meditation levels. So in dhyana we have many different aspects. We can distinguish them considering their activity, their way of meditating, their qualities, and also their qualities. Considering their nature, we have dhyana as shamatha, meaning mental calmness, but and also as vipassana, discernment, the aspect that discriminates reality. Vipassana is a synonymous of wisdom, and then the union of shamatha and vipassana. In terms of activity, the dhyana that establishes in joy. There is the dhyana that allows one to develop quality, the dhyana that allows to accomplish sentient beings' benefit. In terms of method, for example, we can distinguish a dhyana endowed with both conception and analysis, non-conception and non-analysis, both absence of both of the two. We can also distinguish dhyanas endowed with choice, equanimity, satisfaction. There are many kinds different, but in essence, we can calculate the 3, shamatha, vipassana, and union of the both. Then we have the next parameter, sherab or prajna. Prajna means knowledge or excellence or superior knowledge, meaning the superior knowledge or excellent knowledge. So about wisdom, we can discriminate wisdom that knows the ultimate, the wisdom that knows the relative, and the one that knows the way of loving beings. The first one knows the non-self of individual and phenomena. It's seeing suchness, first of all, as the reflection, as a representation, and then ultimately the knowledge of relative phenomena, meaning the knowledge of all the sciences, like the traditional sciences, and then the knowledge that knows how to help sentient beings, meaning knowing to know how to help sentient beings without harming them, knowing how to accomplish this life's benefit and also the ultimate benefit of sentient beings. We can also distinguish 3 types, which are more generally in terms of developing ultimate wisdom. We can distinguish the knowledge resulting from hearing the teachings, so it's a learned knowledge. Then wisdom resulting from contemplation or reflection. It's a wisdom that we acquired because we observed it by ourselves. And then the third time, knowledge resulting from meditation. So here, fundamentally, we can find to the six parameters and 18 aspects. And these 18 aspects are all practiced for beings' benefit without harming sentient beings, accepting and being tolerant, patient towards the difficulties that one can encounter. We do them without being distracted. We fully apply oneself to it without any interruption, and so without distraction, and with the understanding of emptiness, knowing that all those things are just a mere mirage. They are devoid of any substantiality. So I was saying that each parameter is the opposite of another negative conduct. For example, the opposite of generosity is greediness, or more especially the attachment, or only looking for one's benefit to not share with others. So it's characterized by the so-called greediness. The opposite of ethical discipline is the absence of discipline, or an activity that harms others, or it's a moral conduct, it's following rules that are fundamentally not beneficial and harm ourselves and others. Then the opposite of patience is the agitated mind. It's an attitude. It's an hostile attitude, an angry attitude. The opposite of diligence or enthusiastic perseverance is laziness. The opposite of dhyana, of meditation, is distracted mind, distraction. The opposite of wisdom is ultimately ignorance, and relatively all the wrong preconceptions, the what looks like wisdom, the look-alike wisdom, something that looks like knowledge but it's just a fiction. So saying so, you can understand a bit better what the 6 parameters mean, which are the essence of the path. So as we saw this morning, may the rare and sublime thought of enlightenment be born where it is not born yet. Once it is born, may it never deteriorate and increase more and more. So relying on loving kindness for all sentient beings, and through the 7 branch practice, we can genuinely generate bodhicitta. And once bodhicitta is generated through the 6 parameters practice, and in particular patience and discipline, we make sure to never lose bodhicitta, to never deteriorate our bodhicitta, and then thanks to wisdom associated with meditation and contemplation, we can increase all those qualities. All these qualities and paramitas become paramitas only if they are associated to wisdom. Otherwise, it is said that the 5 paramitas are like a group of blind people. If we practiced the 5 first, generosity, from generosity to meditation, if we just cultivate those 5, it doesn't bring to enlightenment. They have to be associated to wisdom. It's only when they are associated to wisdom that those practices really become paramitas, meaning that they are excellent, what paramita actually means, paramita, excellent, and that they can really take us beyond suffering, conditioned existence, and that they can really take us to enlightenment and accomplish Buddha and Bodhisattva's activity. We can also bring those 6 paramitas to the 2 accumulations, the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of wisdom. So the first 2 paramitas, generosity and ethical discipline, are essentially the 2 means to acquire merit. They are predispositions to attain alignment, and also they give capacity to develop an activity that is beneficial to sentient beings. And the last 2, dhyana and prajna, are the means to acquire wisdom. So here the word accumulation is sometimes replaced by acquiring the equipment of merit, acquiring the equipment of wisdom. And they sound good. For example, if we want to go on the moon, we need the proper equipment, right? Otherwise we can't get to the moon. So if we want to develop wisdom, if we want to develop enlightenment, we need to equip ourselves with certain qualities. So meritorious qualities are qualities that allows one to accomplish one's and others' benefit, and the equipment of knowledge is the equipment that allows one to really engage into wisdom. And so the first 2 are essentially mostly merit. The last one is wisdom. And so the paramitas in between, patience, diligence, and meditation, have the 2 aspects. They both support the development of merit and the development of wisdom. We can also distinguish the first 5 as method and the 6th one as wisdom, because you see, we often say the union of methods and wisdom. So because the first 5 one are mostly the expression of love and compassion, and the last one is so wisdom. This is why Atisha, the master, the Indian master Atisha, said, without wisdom, generosity and the next qualities, meaning the 5 ones, the 5 first ones, have been explained as a method by the Buddha. They are auxiliaries and they come and support wisdom. So here what is important is the inseparability of methods and wisdom, meaning inseparability of compassion of wisdom. If we cultivate only wisdom or partial wisdom, so if we cultivate partial wisdom, we can actually go beyond samsara, but we won't be able to accomplish Buddha's activity, help all sentient beings. The bodhisattva will also cultivate compassion to its higher degree through the 5 first paramitas, thanks to which he'll be able to develop the manifestation bodies of Nyamanakaya and Sambhogakaya. He won't only realize Dhammakaya, but he will also develop the manifestation bodies for the benefit of sentient beings. So this concludes the brief presentation of the paramitas. So now, for the time that we have left, I will give space for your questions, if you have any. So question, can you please come back on the 3 kind of courage for the bodhisattva and when it comes on the path? There's 3 kind of bodhisattvas, there's 3 kind of courage, and how it comes in the path. So Rinpoche says, it comes usually when we take the bodhisattva's vows. It expresses different degrees of courage. If we want to talk as bodhicitta, here what you have to know, whatever attitude you have, it's different degrees of bodhicitta. It's always bodhicitta. If you don't feel as a shepherd or a captain, if you only have the king's courage, it's still bodhicitta. So for example, we can think, oh, I want to help all sentient beings, but now I don't have the means. First I should attain enlightenment, may I be reborn in Buddha. So you may wish to be reborn in Sukhavati, Dewachen, next to Buddha Amitabha, and to be able there to obtain all the levels and develop the perpetual activity for the benefit of all sentient beings. But here it shows inferior courage because first we want to get out of samsara, and it shows our limits in our understanding of wisdom. So probably for most of us, it is probably for most of us the way we take bodhisattva vows. But it's really genuine, it's okay. We shouldn't think that if we don't develop the other forms of bodhicitta, we don't develop it properly. It's not like that. It's completely perfect. It's fine. You can start this way and slowly, gradually, your wisdom will develop, and so your courage will develop. And so you will then be able to develop this other kind of motivations. It's something that is possible. But for some bodhisattvas, such as Avalokiteshvara, from the very moment they generated bodhicitta, they also generated the other vows, such as the shepherd vow or shepherd attitude. It depends, actually, your dispositions. The way you awakened to bodhicitta according to your own capacity or predispositions.
Quand vous avez parlé de la générosité, quand vous avez parlé de la générosité, pour un bodhisattva, n'était pas tenu de donner par exemple sa vie.
Sorry. So you talked about generosity, and you said a bodhisattva doesn't have to give his own life because it's harming him. And we saw many examples in the Jataka where the bodhisattva give their own family, their own children, and he is manipulated by others. And I actually saw some examples that seem to sound the opposite to what you said. For example, Nagarjuna, he gave his life for a young prince that can't become a prince because his father is alive for 100 centuries. The prince is waiting. The prince was awaiting the king's death in order to be able to wear a beautiful fabric he really loves very much and that he could only wear in the enthronement ceremony. So I don't understand here why Nagarjuna giving his life won't generate negativity for that being. I don't understand why or how, when we are Nagarjuna's level, something that can be really harmful to the being is actually not harmful. So here there are many things to distinguish. To clarify that point, first, the bodhisattva doesn't make a donation, doesn't give something that would be useless. Something, if it's not beneficial to the other one, he won't make it. And especially if it's harmful for him. So this is especially applicable for a beginner bodhisattva. So the extraordinary giving of his members, of his body, is precise only for bodhisattvas who've realized emptiness, who have at least attained the first bodhisattva bhumis. For that kind of bodhisattva, his manifestation in the world appears only as a dream. They have no attachment, they have no difficulty. If they see any way they can satisfy someone, create a favorable contact to that person to bring them to enlightenment, if they see any possibility, they will do it. A bodhisattva who has attained the first bhumi doesn't limitate himself to one manifestation. They can simultaneously manifest in 100 different shapes, in 100 different words, and simultaneously be in the presence of 100 different Buddhas. And this will increase exponentially according to the development of their wisdom. So for a bodhisattva to do such an action, meaning giving his life for someone who wants to wear a fabric. Actually, it was not just wearing a beautiful fabric. It was also about becoming the king. But the bodhisattva sees that in this way he can help beings and he can fulfill their wish, even temporarily and also ultimately. So this is out of the box of a self-grasping. Imagine you are in a dream. You know that you dream. You are aware that you're dreaming, and all what is happening is actually happening nowhere, right? Because it's a dream. Even though it manifests, it's not happening anywhere. You can think you're in a very big place, a vast landscape, a vast environment. Sometimes we dream that, and once we woke up, we know that nothing like that happened. It was just appearances. And so for the bodhisattvas, their body, their life, their possessions are just appearances because they realized emptiness. Does it answer your question? Thank you, Rinpoche. Maybe you just answered my question, I don't know, but you talked about Buddha's activity, and it is hard for me sometimes to understand this notion of Buddha's activities. Sometimes it seems contradictory to what you said at the beginning of the week, that we can only hear Buddha's teaching, examine them, and try to experience them. So it seems sometimes contradictory to me that there is an activity of the Buddha that can be effective to us out of the fact that we are analyzing or contemplating the teachings. So for us, it's our access to the teachings, meaning the Buddha's activity manifests right now through the teaching we're sharing. Right now, you are in contact with Buddha's activity. We are. It's not what I am saying. It is just what the Buddha taught that I'm sharing with you, that nourishes me at the same time as it nourishes you. So we get in touch to Buddha's teaching with his activity, the activity of his speech, the activity of his mind is also present, and the activity of his historical body left traces, and actually activity means something that gives us access to enlightenment. It opens the doors to enlightenment so that we can perceive what reality is. Buddha cannot reach enlightenment instead of us. He has attained enlightenment and he can show us how to attain enlightenment. And then there are other kind of activities that we may not perceive directly, but rather indirectly. Buddha did a lot of wishes for all sentient beings. For example, in Sutras of the Great Vehicle, it is mentioned that all pleasant things in the world, all good things in the world are the fruit of Buddha's merit that was dedicated to sentient beings. So somehow all the progress that we know, the modern progress, the modern comfort, favorable circumstances, all what protects us, all those things are the accomplishment of Buddha's wishes. There is a part in the teaching of Vimalakirti, translated many times in French, which I invite you to read, and in one part of the text. Parasols are represented to the Buddha, different parasols. So I think the audience asked him what was the extent of his activity. So the Buddha lifts up the parasol, and so without the parasol getting smaller, nor the universe, without the parasol getting bigger, nor the universe getting smaller, the audience sees infinity of universes. And the Buddha says, in all these universes, I'm simultaneously present for sentient beings' benefit. So the Buddha says that the planet where we live, the world where we live, the Buddha did for incalculable amount of time. He gave, he offered things, he made an incredible amount of wishes so that we gather favorable conditions, so that all the conditions are gathered on our earth. And then in the audience, someone said, but our world is so imperfect. There are so many things not working. How can it be the fruit of Buddha's wishes? And then the Buddha touches the earth with his feet and says, I'm going to show you how I wished it. And then the whole audience says a very perfect word. And the Buddha says, it's not, if you can't say it, it's not because I didn't wish it, it's because on your own veils. It's only because of your own veils that you can't see it. So there is at the same time a kind of blessing, a kind of support that Buddha has developed, but it has a limitation, and those limitations are created by ourselves, by our own ignorance, by our own delusion, by our own afflictions. And the more we go beyond them, the more we can benefit from Buddha's activity. And so right now we are enjoying the Nirmana Kaya Buddha's activity. The Buddha who lived in our perception about 200,000 years ago. But since that, has the Buddha completely disappeared? No, his activity goes on. And there are many masters, as we can see in history, that could benefit from Buddha's teaching. And the Sambhogakara's aspect of Buddha is still active. As long as we understand emptiness, we can relate directly to the Buddha and receive his teachings that will help us to deepen our knowledge. That is at least what is taught in the Great Vehicle literature. Let's do a last question. Thank you, Rinpoche. I just wanted to precise something about confession. Concretely, how does it work? Is it like we make clear things with ourselves, meaning we be aware, we regret, we promise ourselves to not do the same thing again? I would like to know if in Buddhism there is like the confessional equivalent, meaning a place where we would confess, where we would explain to someone our thoughts. Is it like in Buddhism the person will confess themselves to Sangha? Or so concretely speaking, in the common vehicle, there is the confession as we saw in our teaching, and then there's the confession in the framework of, in the context of the Shravaka discipline. It's called the practic moksha. So in the context of practic moksha, as a lay person, we can take the 5 precepts or just some of the 5 precepts, and as a monk, for example, we have the Genyen, Getsul, Gelong vows, different levels of vows that can be taken, and we have practice so-called sojong. Sowa in Tibetan means to reinforce or to revive, and Jongwa means purify. So here the idea is that we constantly need to ameliorate or revive our conduct and refine one's conduct, eliminating the negative way of behaving. So every 2 weeks, monastics gather and read the Vinaya text. Vinaya is the Buddha, the text attributed to Buddha, in which are mentioned the precepts that are to be followed, meaning the life rules of the monks, or the daily rules of the monks. Here are different degrees. If some are broken, the monk, the person is not a monk or nun anymore. They have to leave the monastery. In case some rules, some minor rules, when damaged, have to be restored. So here, confession is the fact of reciting all the rules, remembering the mistakes we've done. If we've done very major mistakes, we need to declare it to the abbot, and the abbot will give instructions to be followed. So this is in the monastic context, but now we are in the bodhisattva vehicle, and the practice of confession is not only considering conduct rules, the practice moksha behavior rules, but more deeply, it's the bodhisattva's conduct rule, but it actually concerns all what is negative, meaning the 3 poisons. So it's getting away from any source of downfall or negativity. whether it is praksha, pratik moksha, bodhisattva, vow, all those negativities, if we fail on the vow, it's because of the 3 poisons. So we are aware of their negativity, we confess the downfall, and we engage to voluntarily follow those the virtuous attitudes. So this confession is done in front of an infinity of Buddhas, all the Buddhas in their infinite number. So the person is asking again, is there like a place where we confess to someone, or is it just towards ourselves that we confess? So Rinpoche says, no, it's not like there was one place for that, but we confess in front of all the Buddhas. Sometimes monks and nuns will confess. Actually, they confess together because they gather and they practice and they confess together. Then for Sojong, we wake up early in the morning. We take Sojong vows, and we try to follow those vows for 24 hours. And this is a way to purify one's conduct. It's a way to purify our ethics and try to maintain it during the whole lifetime. Thank you for your attention.